We're here at Bishop Hendricken High School in Warwick, Rhode Island to talk to former Assistant Reservation Director Dan Friel as he shares with us his insight into his time at camp as well as what he's up to now. So just to share with everybody that might not know, where did you work during your time at camp and how long did you work at camp?
Sure. So I started at Yawgoog Scout Reservation on the staff in 2009 on the challenge staff at Camp 3 Point, and then moved up to be program commissioner the following year and year after that, and then the assistant camp director at Camp 3 Point. And then moved on, took 2 years from Yawgoog and went up to Camp Tuscarora up in the Catskill Mountains in New York and became the commissioner there and then the program director before returning to Yawgoog Scout Reservation in the summer of 2015 as the assistant reservation director, which I served until 2020 and was appointed the communications director for the Narragansett Council, as well as the assistant reservation director in 2018 and served until 2020. So.
And did you have a favorite job out of all of those?
I would have to say my favorite job to this day is still program commissioner. I loved being a program commissioner because I felt that ideally to be able to work with my colleagues on the staff, but also to really get to know the scout leaders and the scouts, I felt was really a rewarding job and really gratifying. And so that will always be my favorite job at Yawgoog Scout Reservation, was definitely program commissioner.
Awesome. And those are obviously the jobs that you did while you were on reservation, but you also did a lot of work when it comes to promoting camp and making it what it is, sharing it with people that may not be familiar with what we offered at Yawgoog. Can you talk a little bit about what efforts you made for promotion, kind of what maybe your favorite parts of that work?
Sure. So I remember early in the summer of 2015, Mr. John Mosby, our scout executive at the time, he would come down to the Sunday dress parade, obviously, and we were having conversations. And little announced to me that I did not realize that basically I was being interviewed for what the possibilities would be for me year round with the Narragansett Council. And Tom would ask me questions too, but I remember Mr. Mosby asking about how he felt that we could increase the numbers of scouts at summer camp. I believe we were at the low 5,000s at that time, about 5,200 at the time, and ways that we could do that. And I had a background in sales and in promotions and in social media. So I had been managing a mayor in Rhode Island's social media. I was their social media consultant, and I was also making simple, stupid money off anti-aging products using social media and actually traveling around New England and beyond and doing promotions with just a projector screen, a projector, a laptop, and just showing photos. And so I felt that, if I could do that with anti-aging products, and I could do that with Yawgoog, because there's no better product than Yawgoog Scout Reservation. And I was confident in it. And everyone was at first rightfully so, in their position to kind of question that. But I said, give me a projector screen, and a laptop, and let me see what we can do. And I went out, I'll never forget, we went out to Long Island for my first presentation. And there was about 40 scouts in the troop. And about 30 of them were registered to go to camp, and the other 10 were undecided. And I remember leaving that night after doing this brief presentation, the first one, and I remember that 7 of those scouts ended up signing up before I left that evening, and then 3 more signed on after I left. And that right there was all we really need to see, to say like, wow, this is gonna work. And I think to be honest with you, Ethan, I think what changes it is that, as you know, being a scout, when you hear your scoutmaster talking all the time, you kind of, much like our parents growing up, right? You kind of tend to listen to them, but not really pay attention. And I think the same thing is for our adults, our parents, our volunteers. So when you have somebody that actually comes out from the camp that takes that level of customer service and that high touch to be able to answer any questions, right? Mm-hmm. Now the scoutmaster may not be able to answer those questions. Our role as Yawgoog Scout Reservation, we had to answer those questions. It was our job, it was our livelihood, it was our mission. And I was able to answer those questions of those parents and those adult leaders and those scouts. And that really changed things. And that set off a ball in motion that really changed things, I think, considerably, not just for Yawgoog, but as we move forward nationally and talking about summer camp promotions and marketing.
Yeah. So you mentioned obviously your first presentation that you got to do, but is there a favorite presentation that sticks out to you from all the different trips you may have made?
Oh, I mean, there's so many, and I'm reminded just as we were preparing for this interview, I was reminded in speaking with Quentin Reynolds about the trips we went on together, and the trips I went on with Brennan Reynolds and John DeLuvio and Alex Conway. We traveled all over this country. We literally traveled to Texas and Florida and all the way up and down the East Coast multiple times, planes, trains, ferries, and automobiles. And there's just so many. I do remember there was another one. Again, it was a Long Island trip, and I remember a parent in the back of the room. She was very nervous, and I got to know her, and I used to try to work the room beforehand. And I went over and I was speaking with her, and she said, "I'm a little nervous." I said, "Why is that?" She said, "Well, they want my son to go to summer camp, and I don't think I'm going to send him over on that ferry. It just seems to be, uncomfortable for me." And she didn't realize that I was the one doing the presentation.
Okay.
And then I started the presentation, and I talked about our summer camp promotional programming and our provisional camping, and I talked about Fun Friends and Adventure. And sure enough, when I opened up the room to ask any questions, this mom raised her hand, and I said, "Yeah, you have a question?" She said, "Yeah, how many weeks can I send him?" And that was just awesome. But I also really great memories of being out in Texas, out there, Troop 55, and my experiences out there were just remarkable. Just getting to know that troop. That troop had 275 scouts, and Brendan Reynolds and I just had an amazing experience that I'll never forget. Not just doing the presentation, but really getting to know the families and the people out there. It was just, there's so many. That's just two. That's just two examples, but there's so many.
Even though he's in a new office, Dan makes sure his past is very much present in this new space.
Nothing compares to standing on stage at the J. Yawgoog to 1,200 screaming scouters. That by far. And to be able to introduce Tom Sisson.
So you got this beautiful portrait, obviously, in your office. Can you talk about a little bit why you chose this one and maybe what it means to you?
Sure. Yeah, this used to hang in Tom Sisson's office, and Tom used to always joke, "Don't worry, Dan. When I leave, there's going to be no trace of me." And I would always joke back to Tom, "Well, Tom, just leave the Maxwell Maze," because I just love this portrait that Maxwell Maze did. Obviously, a very well-known Rhode Island artist, but this is one of my most favorite of Yawgoog. And it's a constant reminder of where I came from and how big of an impact. And anyone that comes into my office here at Bishop Hendricken, they see this, and it's always a great conversation starter because Bishop Hendricken is well known throughout the state, obviously and beyond, as is Yawgoog Scout Reservation. So it's really an honor to be able to serve two amazing Rhode Island institutions and that have had impacts on youth for decades, if not, Yawgoog with over a century, but now Bishop Hendricken with over 60 years. So this is one of my pride and joys, and I love showing it off here in my office. So it's great.
And kind of just looking at it, there's obviously so much of camp incorporated into that, and something that you were big about during your time at camp was reservation perspective.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means to you and kind of how you've seen it change over the years?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and that stemmed from Tom's legacy of reservation perspective. Tom Sisson would always talk about a time where the three camps were so competitive that it was difficult to sometimes get them to work together as one. And one thing that Tom and I really wanted to make sure happened was just that everybody was on the same page. And so when I spoke earlier about the unification of our team on the key staff and making sure we moved ahead cohesively, a lot of that stems from res perspective. And because we are three camps on one reservation, and each camp, as you know, coming from Camp Medicine Bow, they all have their different qualities, right? And 3 Point is big on their tradition, they're big on their heritage and where they came from and the origins of Yawgoog Scout Reservation and being once Yawgoog in its entirety, Camp 3 Point. And Medicine Bow obviously is their heart. They're the cream between the Oreo cookies, the beating heart of Yawgoog, and they come as kind of like the tying the two together. They're almost like, they're not forgotten, Definitely not. But what they do is they kind of and it's always interesting to me is that camp directors and staff of those camps take on these qualities of the camp. So Medicine Bow I always found to be kind of like the peacemakers. They tended to kind of tie the two camps together. And there's no debate that Sandy Beach is definitely the powerhouse. They are definitely the most energetic, and it just makes sense, right? Because they're the youngest camp and the largest camp. And so you always know when you're in Sandy Beach. And they make no bones about it. And so you put those three camps together, and which is why Yawgoog Scout Reservation is the exception. It's the premier camp of the Northeast. I like to always say it's the #1 rated resident scout camp in the country after the high adventure base camps. And without those three camps, and then you add, I made it a really big point to bring reservation services into that perspective as well, and making sure that all four of those teams came together as one, because without it, if we're not all working together for the mission, things fall behind, and we needed to have it. And that gave us the best program. So when things were slacking off or things were going awry in other camps, res perspective was important because we all had to work together as a team. And every camp had its good days, bad weeks, good weeks. The fact is that we all work together as one, and reservation perspective was key. And the thing is, for me, I did grow up in the Point, Camp Sleepy Hollow, week 3. And I did work in the Point. But I would tell you now, having the opportunity to serve as the assistant reservation director, I don't have a favorite. I absolutely love all the camps. And it was an honor and a privilege to be able to get to know all the camps as the individuals, but then the greatest honor was to serve leading all 3 camps. And that was the thrill of a lifetime. So yeah, this is one of my pride and joys. So, but res perspective is so important in order to get things done. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks for discussing that.
So all those things, promoting camp, helping it grow, allowed us to change a lot over the course of your time at camp when it came to our actual operations. Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about maybe programs that you implemented during the summer, things that you saw change that you think benefited Yawgoog in the long run?
Yeah, I think early vision is important. And one thing that Tom Sisson and I, before he even started as assistant reservation director, he shared with me what his concerns were going forward in the upcoming years at Yawgoog. And at the time, that was December 22nd of 2014, when Tom and Sisson and I met at a Panera Bread in Seekonk. And I remember hearing his concerns, but also hearing his vision and what he wanted to see. And knowing, having been a part of scouting for as long as Tom was, as long as I had been, that and seeing society changes and seeing things that were coming, we had an idea of what was coming. And it was very exciting, but also it can be very scary, because when you have a 100-year-old institution, there's a lot at stake and a lot of big decisions to make. And so it was really an experience to be able to keep what was so great at Yawgoog, but also to keep the future in mind. And it necessarily wasn't so much on changing everything. So for example, the 2 things that really stick out to me was our former CIT program. It was great. It was one of the oldest counselor and training programs in the country, but there were things that maybe weren't actually happening anymore that were potentially happening in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And when you look at the data and the numbers decreasing of enrollment in the CIT program, something needs to change, right? So we started internally changing those things to adapt the program of what modern day youth would be looking for, but also keeping in mind that girls were coming to Yawgoog, and maybe not everyone understood that, but also it was a big goal of mine as well, and not openly, not publicly, but I was really excited to bring venture scouts into Yawgoog. So regardless of the movement that occurred with Scouts BSA, we still wanted to think about that and consider Girl Scouts in Yawgoog. So rebranding and actually restructuring that from within, and then rebranding that the Yawgoog leadership experience was huge. And not an overnight process. That took multiple years. Actually, if you really look at the long haul of it, it was 3 years to do that. The other was the Beta Powell program. And again, those numbers we felt could have done better. And again, sometimes that just means re-energizing and reforming those things. And so taking what we started with the Outpost program of Fun, Friends, and Adventure, which was an amazing success in 2016, and then bringing that in to rebrand our entire provisional program was very, very exciting. And they're still there today as the Yawgoog Leadership Experience and the Fun, Friends, and Adventure program. So very, very exciting to be a part of that. And really that took a lot of time, a lot of feedback, a lot of discernment, and a lot of input from so many. So that wasn't something that wasn't done easily, but we did it. And I think the numbers proved to be a success. So
And let's kind of zone in on that Fun, Friends, and Adventure program, because
Sure.
at least having talked to other summer camp directors, having talked to other people, I've heard nothing like what was pulled off in 2016. What came together that weekend with scouts coming back, all these different adventures coming together.
Yeah.
So what was kind of the origin of that idea, and how do you think it was able to be pulled off at that scale?
That's a great story, and one of which, not too many people really know. It's kind of when they talk about Walt Disney creating Mortimer Mouse, which then became Mickey, on the way back from a train ride on a napkin. Honestly, that program was drawn up on the back of a piece of paper on a flight back from New Mexico, from Philmont Scout Ranch, with Tom Sisson and I in the fall of 2015. Tom and I went out to the outdoor planning conference and met with a lot of our colleagues throughout the country, and met Mike Fossil, who is a NASA astronaut and Scoutmaster, and just a perfect example of scouting in our country. And he talked about fun, friends, and adventure. And we were so energized by what he was able to accomplish from space and what he was able to accomplish as a leader in his own scouting program. So with that in mind, you put Tom and I together in a room, and you've experienced it, and not many have experienced it. We're really seeing the brainstorming process for Tom and I, but we really just got so creative, and we had so much fun of thinking about all these opportunities. And some all didn't make it. They didn't make it past the cutting floor because there was a lot of ideas that we had, but we had to really narrow it down into it. And then we had to go back and we had to sell it to our team. We had to pitch it to the Paul Forbes and John Buno and then to our camp directors. And really, and then go to our council leadership and say, we think this could do it and we can work with it. And then to find the people to pull it off. And it just so happens that it was Brennan Reynolds, Quinton Reynolds, and Ryan Collard, who were the commissioners at the time at Camp Sandy Beach, who really, there's something that happens in scouting with young people, and they're almost afraid of nothing. And those three individuals really were confident to spearhead and really take on the weight of really making sure that Tom and I's vision was implemented. And that was a beautiful thing to see those three individuals really blossom. And I would say that really was Brendan Reynolds already really started in his role of leadership at Yawgoog, but I really say that was a blossoming time for Quinton Reynolds and Ryan Collard to really show Yawgoog and their peers really what they were made of, but also to be able to put that program on seamlessly. There was not one issue that occurred. And to take children and youth and staff off reservation and bring them back had never been done before at Yawgoog. And for Paul Forbes, who served 40 years at Yawgoog Scout Reservation, I'll never forget it. We had this beautiful banquet at the end of that program, and we were walking across the Donald North Court, and he had his mac salad and his steak, and he said to me, and I'll never forget it because this is what it was for me. He said, in all my 40 years of Yawgoog, I think that was my favorite. And for Paul Forbes to say that, that for me was an honor. But to be able to give those scouts the opportunity of a lifetime, from the fire department of Camp Yawgoog to be able to send scouts out on the deep sea and to sail and to experience, education in firearms like they maybe wouldn't have had. There's just so many things that can be said about that program. And again, it goes back to having the team to do it. But that all started on a trip back from Philmont Scout Ranch in 2015 with Tom Sisson and I scribbling it all on the back of a piece of paper. So, and now we know it as our provisional program at Yawgoog Scout Reservation. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Wow. So you mentioned kind of in the past couple stories the importance of other people that work at camp.
100%.
in your experience in being able to pull all these things off.
Yeah.
Could you maybe zone in on one person that had the most dramatic impact on your time at camp?
Well, I'm going to say that there's a twofold.
Okay.
So I will say, without a doubt, that nobody had the impact on me as Tom Sisson. I view myself privileged and honored to have gotten to know Tom Sisson, the reservation director, the father, the papa, the colleague, and the friend. And yes, Tom did alter the trajectory of my career, but Tom also altered the trajectory of my life at a time. And that story's not really well told. But Tom knows what he did for me. My family knows what Tom did for me. My close friends know what Tom did for me in the summer of 2012, and which altered my entire life. And so Tom Sisson, I can't say enough about that man who I got to work with and to create a bond that I think forever changed my life, and that he allowed me to serve with him and to be able to work with him in a way that I don't think anyone really got to. And that for me is a privilege and an honor that I will always cherish and be forever grateful for. So without a doubt, Tom Sisson. But I can't say enough that, because there's a twofold there, because I can't say enough about the individuals that I got to work with on a one-on-one basis from the years of 2017 to 2020. And those are an entire group of people of Alex Conway, Brendan Reynolds, Jesse Batty, Phil Lorenko, Quentin Reynolds, Mitch McGonigal, Alexandria Wells, and John DeLulio. And those individuals taught me, Paul Forbes, John Guno, those individuals taught me more than I could have ever taught them, because they gave me the opportunity to lead, and I learned so much from them on their innovation and their dynamic relationships and their ability to work as a unified. There was nothing that was done without an entire discussion with the team about what we were going to do. And I can't say enough about the opportunity and to work with all of them, but the impact that they had on me, I think they don't even know. But I will be forever grateful for the opportunity to work with them and what they taught me. I think I continue to be amazed by all of them, and I love watching them in their lives today. I always say that they're my favorites, like they really are, and I don't mean that in a way that demeans any other of my relationships at Yawgoog. I mean that as a way because they taught me so much in those years that I could never pay back enough to what they did for me. So it's a twofold. It's hard to put one person, but obviously Tom Sisson will always have a place in my heart, and we still talk every day today. So incredible.
So as a part of our interview with Dan, we're going to be speaking with President of Bishop Hendricken, Father Marciano, as he shares his insight into Dan's life, not only being a friend, but now getting to work with him as well. So how did you meet Dan, and how long have you known him?
So I met Dan and his family when I was assigned to St. Kevin's Parish as an associate pastor in 1992. Dan was a young man in the parish. He has a great family that's very involved, and so I was able to watch him grow and mature. So I left there in 94 and then came back to St. Kevin's Parish in 2012 as pastor. So I got to re-engage with the Friel family at that time. I was appointed here as president in 2019, and we did some of the staff, and our director of development decided to retire. We put a search committee out, of which, by the way, Dan was a member. And then I decided that he might want to apply for that job because the job description was a perfect fit. Director of development is the person in the school that gets our message out to alumni, keeps us focused on our mission in many ways, and also has a rapport in the building with staff and faculty on my behalf. I knew when I was looking for a director of development at Hendricken, I had the right man in mind. He's been in very responsible roles, both at Yawgoog and then later in the village that he ran, but now at Hendricken. He's forming great partnerships, and he does it in a cheerful way that makes people want to be part of it. We just got back from a trip in Florida, which was, as you know, Dan, was super organized, super successful. Of course, he gave me my orders early in the morning by text messages, what I was going to be doing that day, and it all worked out perfect. So we are delighted to have him on our staff here. He also initiated a partnership with our faculty that he and his staff take lunch duty in the cafeteria. That's not in the wheelhouse of development people, but he's developing future alumni. So he's sitting with freshmen, sophomore, junior, and seniors who see him as a friend. And then when the Hendricken calls, when they're graduates, and please God, Dan's still with us, they remember the young man that was in the cafeteria with them, to chat with them and to build partnerships with them. So he's got a lot of initiatives that he started already, and it's a huge success. Even our board has been very impressed with our selections of new development director.
Is there a certain job you did at camp, or maybe a certain moment that you think prepared you well to be the director of development at Bishop Hendricken?
I think just overall, all of my experiences in scouting and everything that I was able to learn and to be able to put into action at Yawgoog and in overall Camp Tuscarora National Camping School overall has prepared me to not only be a director of development here at Bishop Hendricken, but also in my role as director of executive office role at Sturbridge Village before coming here. And that is engaging and in building the relationships with not just my colleagues, but also the relationships with alum and donors and corporate sponsors and business partners, and to really build those relationships. Everything that we did at Yawgoog Scout Reservation that we do in scouting is to really build those relationships that last a lifetime, right? And the mission of the Boy Scouts of America is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral decisions over their lifetime, instilling in them the values of the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. Because not only was I developed in that mission, but then was able to help execute that mission and to be able to work towards that mission. When you live by the Scout Oath and the Scout Law and you follow those principles, it really gives you the opportunity and the ability to really serve really in any position. You know, I've had such a very wide-ranging career of communications and PR and now development and marketing and relationship building and people management, that really it all comes down to, everything I learned at Yawgoog. I said that to Jim Hummel in 2015 in a Rhode Island PBS interview, is that everything I learned at Yawgoog. Most people learn everything they need to in kindergarten. I needed a little bit more time, of the educational variety, but everything I learned at Yawgoog. So it has prepared me to do, really, at this point, anything I put my mind to, as long as I remember where I came from. And I remember what it took to get where I am today. And I remember the individuals that helped me along the way, and to turn around and help my own colleagues and to help other people chase their dreams and their goals. And I think, again, if you live by the values of the Scout and the Scout Law, you can do anything for your mind to.
As the interview came to an end, we still wanted to get more insight from Dan as he looked back on his time at camp and how it prepared him for the next steps in his career.
We kind of just mentioned it. Working on a campaign, you also worked at Old Sturbridge Village, now you're working here.
Yeah.
Thinking about all those different opportunities that you've had and different jobs that you've worked,
Yeah.
is there one that kind of relates back the most to your time at camp? One that you think, oh, this really connects back to what I did at Yawgoog?
Yeah, 100%, without a doubt. I said it. So I had the privilege and honor to serve on the leadership team of a statewide campaign for governor, and I said every day that, because working for Yawgoog and managing summer camp at Yawgoog is nonstop. It's 24/7. From the time you get up in the morning to hopefully you get to sleep at night, if you're not getting woken up in the middle of the night from issues that are happening. which was pretty frequent considering, you have 1,200 people on a reservation. But you're moving at a fast pace that is just, as Paul Forbes would say, the most unnatural thing you'll ever experience. And so then going on and being able to be on a campaign, and in the leadership role that I was in for this campaign, I never felt like I was back at camp like I did until this campaign, because it was just nonstop all day long, on stage every day. You get up in the morning and you're right out the gate running, and you're in a million different locations throughout the state, and you're always like having to have that hand on. I used to tell the staff all the time, smile, like you're under parade, because when you're walking around Yawgoog, you always are on stage. So you're always smiling, you're always reaching out, you're always saying hello to people. And being on a campaign, you're doing the same thing, where you're constantly saying hello, you're constantly like energizing others, you're constantly energizing your candidate. So, in my role at Yawgoog was to continuously being out there, communicating with the staff, the campers, the volunteers, the alum, the donors, the board members. It was just nonstop. That's how it felt being on the campaign. Go, 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 go. I loved every minute of it, and I loved my candidate, but it was nonstop. So I'd have to say, working on a gubernatorial campaign was the closest thing to working for Yawgoog that I've experienced. Yeah, 100%.
So, not working at camp anymore, are there things that pop up in either your daily life that you either reflect on from time at camp, or maybe some idiosyncrasies that you're used to saying from when you were at camp that still come up today?
Well, that's a phenomenal question. Phenomenal. It's so funny how that all started. It was just by using that word in Saturday Night Show, and then using it in the Sunday dress parade, and how that just became like one of my favorite words. Even in the press release to announce my position here at Hendricken, I used the word phenomenal, and I just, you don't hear that word often, and I just think it's awesome. I think too, I find myself constantly, even walking the hallways here, or when I was at Old Sturbridge Village, walking around the village common, is always bending over and picking up trash or litter when you see it. And I think that's important because you want to keep the place that you work for clean, but also that's just what we learned in scouting. But we did that all around Yawgoog, right? Because we didn't have garbage disposals everywhere. But I think those little things always remind me of scouting. But also just always, again, like I think I've shared, is just always extending the hand, always smiling. I feel like that if I always take what I did at camp and bring it out to the outside world, you can always make people smile. Just like when we walked up Middle Camp Yawgoog Road and you saw people and you said hello and you talked with people, it always brought a smile to their day, and you could change somebody else's day. So I think that I bring into my everyday. There's so many things. And there's, there's a lot of, there's one scoutmaster that was a big impact on me named Friel. And Friel always said, when it's not fun, I don't want to do it anymore. And I use that a lot. And then I always use rabbis. Somebody will say, how you doing? And I'll say, oh my gosh, if I was any better, there'd be 3 of me. And people get a kick out of that too. And I used to say at Old Sturbridge Village, 1 for each institution. And I used to be able to say at Yawgoog, 1 for each camp. Mm-hmm. Well, we don't have 3 Hendrickens, but I'll find a way to work it in there. But I'm doing so good. There should be 3 of me. I love that. So a lot of things I do every day that remind me of camp, for sure. Absolutely.
So, when thinking about working on camp staff, a lot of people are familiar with the idea that there's a lot of benefits to it. But as someone who experienced it, as someone that worked there 10 years, what's a skill that you got there that you don't think people talk about enough when it comes to working on the camp staff?
Yeah, I think over my period of time and what I experienced, again, and I understand that not everybody had the same experiences that I potentially did or the responsibilities that I did, but I think decision-making. Because decision-making at Yawgoog was not, well, there's a couple of things that went into it. So when you're making a decision at Yawgoog, and from my experience is that it just couldn't be what you thought. You had to really take a step back and actually remove yourself from it. And you had to take a look back and take the approach of what would the scouts how would the scouts be affected? How would the staff be affected? How would the leaders be affected? How would the donors, the alum, the corporate sponsors, the business partners, the vendors, the families? I mean, you're talking about an over 100-year institution, and the impacts are millions, right? Millions of lives that have been impacted by Yawgoog. So some of your decisions would obviously impact them, and there would be a lot of opinions. And a lot of people made those opinions known. But making decisions in a timely manner, sometimes you don't even have the ability to really review. There were times in my tenure at Yawgoog where I didn't have the benefit or the ability to really think about it. I had to go with what my gut was. I had to go with what my experiences in life were, and I had to really just make them. And some of those were really life or death situations. And I don't say that in a dramatic way. I say that when you're overseeing a reservation that has 1,200 people on it, things become serious. And then there were other decisions too that, I had the ability to Tom and I both had the ability to take a step back and to review them. And sometimes the decision was not to act at all. And knowing that, and that sometimes is the most difficult decision to make, is to not act at all. But I don't think that the staff and the leaders of Yawgoog get enough credit for their decision making. And I was told early on that there were two things and to never touch: Saturday night show and Sunday dress parade. And so it was difficult for me because I really took that and I wanted to maintain the legacy and the tradition of both those beautiful programs. So when it came down to canceling a Saturday night show, I never wanted to cancel a Saturday night show, and I never wanted to cancel a Sunday dress parade. But I also had to take myself out of it because I loved the Sunday dress parade for what it was. I loved the pomp and circumstance. I loved Sundays at camp. I loved going to church, and I loved the lunch, and I loved going to the Sunday dress parade and seeing all the people as a scout and on staff and as the assistant reservation director. Those are two of my favorite things. But sometimes you have to make a decision. Sometimes it's unfortunate. But when it came to those two things, I can tell you, and Tom and I would go back and forth because he would be like, we'd be watching the radar, or we'd call it the Tomadar, and it would be right down to the point. But Tom would let me make that decision, and most times, I don't think I ever canceled one Saturday night show as an assistant reservation director. I don't think I did. I don't think I had to cancel one. If I did, it was weather, but I don't remember having to cancel one. I don't recall. I know that I waited till like the very last minute, and there was a couple of calls where it was like, we got through the show and I was like, all right, let's wrap up this last scene and get them out of here, and then the rain started. But it was just those things, because I know how important those things were to me as a kid and as a scout, and I wanted to make sure that we brought those things. But there was a lot of decisions that had to be made, some that will never be talked about publicly, that Tom and I had to make. I have to tell you that not a decision was made without thinking about everyone that is impacted by Yawgoog and any of them. And a lot of them were done with no consideration of Tom and I's benefit at all. A lot of them was done because we knew it was for the better of Yawgoog, it was for the better of the staff, the scouts and the scouters. And that's not always an easy thing to do. But I can tell you that moving ahead and in my career and in my life has helped me tremendously. Being able to make decisions, being able to take a step back, to take my own selfish means out of it, and to be able to say what will be best for others, and to use discernment and to make the best decision. And not everyone's going to be great. Not everyone's going to be supportive of it. And sometimes you make a mistake. Sometimes you make the wrong choice. Sometimes you make the wrong decision. But the important thing is to learn from those decisions and to not make the same mistake twice. But know that you did the best you could, and that you did the better for all, and not just especially not for oneself. So decision making is definitely crucial, and I would say one of the most important learned lesson from Outer Scoutation for me anyways. So
I'm just gonna ask you one last question.
Sure.
for that 15-year-old that's watching this video,
Mhm.
that's hearing about this incredible time that you've had at camp, this incredible life that you've made for yourself after camp, what's that one piece of advice you give them that sets them up for success, both at camp and beyond camp?
Give everything your all. There wasn't a day at Yawgoog, even on my worst day, that I didn't give it my all. And sometimes my all is just showing up because there were days that were tough. But in anything in life, I think you need to go at it fully, and you need to commit to it, and sometimes that means thinking about what you're about to do before doing it. And once you've made that decision, go full tilt. Because nothing worth doing in life is worth doing halfway. And Tom Sisson always used to say, there's always enough time to do it a second time. And I believe to get the job done right the first time. But not just the job. I think life is full of experiences, and I feel like we only get one chance. And life's no dress rehearsal. So show up, give it your all, don't forget to wave, and just enjoy every moment. And I can honestly say that if I was to die tomorrow, I would be happy with the life that I've led over these past 34 years, coming up on 35. I don't regret a thing. There are mistakes, there's a lot of victories, but every single thing has made me who I am today. And for that, I am grateful. And so I say, give it your all, because what's the worst that can happen? You fail, and you learn from it. You dust yourself off. And I can tell you that some of my greatest experiences have been from failing. So give it your all and have fun, because as Fran Fleck always told me, when it's not fun, I don't want to do it anymore. And that's my view on life. So I'm just going to continue to have fun and continue to be grateful for all the moments and the experiences I've been given. So like this one today. So thank you, Ethan. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for sitting down with us, Dan. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it anytime.